You're listening to the Childfree Wealth Podcast. We're your hosts, Bri and Dr. J, certified financial planner. Here we discuss life and finances as it relates to being child-free. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Please consult your advisor before implementing any ideas heard on this podcast.
Hey, all you Childfree Wealth listeners. So the other day, Bri kind of, set me off. Let's call it that. So Bri and Ashley had recorded a session, and if you haven't caught it back on Pride, catch it. And both Bri and Ashley have worked with me in different roles, and Bri's been attending a whole bunch of meetings with me. And they had come to the conclusion that if you meet with me, I'm going to tell you to quit your job. Is that fair, Bri?
Yeah, that's fair. That is what I said. Your tagline should be, I'll make you quit your job.
I was like, what? Well, yeah, I've made a lot of people quit their jobs.
Yeah. See, I am not wrong.
There's a session we did with Heather and Scott and talk about actually Heather quitting her job, and she goes on a sabbatical and writes her book. Ashley quit her job, started her own business. Bri went from marketing, running her own business to working with me. I'm like, uh-oh. I guess I do make a lot of people quit their jobs. So what was this conversation, Bri? Tell me about this. And I don't know. I'm having trouble with this because I don't know if it's ever intentional. I actually think my answer is, if you hate your job, you should quit it. But you just went with just quit your job.
Ashley and I were talking. It was the first time we really got to know each other. So we had recorded that session, and then we were just talking afterwards. And she was telling me all about how she used to be a museum curator and worked in museums and then quit and is now a freelancer. And I was like, in most of our meetings, he'll be like, well, why don't you quit your job and start a business or become a consultant or do this or do that? And she's like, really? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I think his tagline should be, I'll make you quit your job. So the next day when we had a meeting, I told him that, and he goes, what? I'm like, it's true. Think about it. And the amount of people just in the past month that some version of that has come out and been told to them, I'm like, you can't say that I'm wrong because I have notes to back up what I'm saying.
Bri's right, okay? I do tell a lot of people quit their jobs, and I never really thought about it in that way. Because I'm really saying, all right, if we're going to embrace this file lifestyle, so we're trying to find the right balance of work at the right time, the right type of job, that often means people need to change. When we meet with couples, and we often, 70% of the people we meet with couples or so, one person in the couple usually needs to change something in their job. It's really interesting. I probably, and now as I'm thinking through it, I don't know, probably 10% of people that reach out to us are perfectly happy with their job and keep doing it forever. The rest are like, well, I really wish I could, or, and I used to use, when I was teaching a question, I asked people, I said, if you could do any job in the world, it doesn't matter, you get paid the same amount of money, what would you do? And they would come with these great answers. My answer would be a boat captain. What's your answer, Bri?
My answer is exactly what I'm doing right now.
Oh, come on.
It is. It really is.
She's only saying that because I pay her. But
yeah, right. No,
okay, so here's where I'm going with this. All right, I'll ignore Bri for a second on this one because she's got to have something bigger. But I had people one person said they wanted to be the bartender to swim up bar. I'm like, that's an awesome idea. Another one, I'll open an ice cream shop, or I want to do this. So I'll ask people, what would you do if you could do anything? And then they'll tell me, and then I'll go, so why don't you do that? And they're like,
Well, I guess if you want a different answer, my answer would be not work. And I'd want to have a foundation that pays for swimming lessons for kids across the country. Kids and adults.
Nice. At least we came up with an answer.
Yeah. Well, it's not work. That's why I was like, it's not an answer I can use.
Well, it is. If you had enough money, that's what you would do.
That's true. I'll be there one day. I'm not there
today. That's the whole point of the
today.
file lifestyles. You can make that choice.
Yeah.
I think the hard part of that is, because we're child-free, we have the time, money, and freedom to do what we want. So if you're not happy with your job, quit. Now, if you're listening to this, That way, make sure your financial plan is set. You have the right budget. We do all the numbers first. But then I'm like, and then quit. And people are like, well, but I was trained in this. And I'm like, that's nice. What the 18-year-old of you chose to do is not what you should do for the rest of your life. If you enjoy it, great. But I can tell you, the 18-year-old version of me was a whole lot dumber and shouldn't have been making life choices. I mean, that's just kind of how that works.
Very true. Same here.
I have people I look at their numbers, and I meet with people on a monthly basis, and I'll do their numbers, take a couple months to kind of figure out what their goals are, and I'll run through all their numbers. I'm like, so you two could quit your job, or you could quit your job and live off your money. And they'll push back at me and go, no, I can't. And I'll do the numbers, and I'll run over, and they'll ask me every question in the world. And I'm like, you can't. Like, well, but what about this? And they start asking me 100 questions. And by the way, my favorite is, well, healthcare. I'm like, you can buy healthcare outside or get a job that has healthcare. Well, but, and then that gets stuck because I take away all their excuses. And my answer is, if you don't like what you're doing, change it. Now, retranslated, I just tell people to quit their job. But
it's more direct and to the point, Well,
you're not wrong. I'm just looking at it with a little more nuance and saying, we spend about a third of our time at work. If you're going to spend a third of your time at work and be miserable, quit.
Yeah. And if you ever come to a meeting and you say, well, I make this much, he'll say, so what you're telling me is that whatever your salary is enough to make you miserable. Guarantee every time. And if there are clients listening to this, they've probably heard him say that. Okay.
And I do, because people will say, well, for some reason, a magic number, $100,000. If I make $100,000, it's going to fix everything. Well, by the way, spoiler alert, doesn't. But they'll go, well, I make $100,000 a year. I'm going, and you're not happy. No. Well, then the magic number is $100,000 and you're willing to be miserable. And they go, well, that wasn't what I said. And I'm like, yeah, it kind of was. You might not have said it in those words, but, or they'll say, well, the benefits are so good. I'm like, so the benefits are good enough for you to be miserable at work. Well, there are good days. Yeah, what? The one day they bring pizza to the office or something?
Go buy pizza yourself, people.
And I think the hard part is there is some guilt, other things where I can't give up this great job that I worked so long for. I've worked to going up the ladder. I see other people who are struggling. I'm like, that's true. That is all true. That does not mean you should be unhappy.
Yep.
And Bri, so I say this to people, and you've seen the reactions. Do you agree with me that they need to quit their job?
Oh, yeah. Some of them you can tell they're miserable. And some of them are like, oh, well, you could probably stick it out for a couple of months while you figure things out. But other ones, I'm like, you should have been out yesterday. Yeah.
So here's a fun one. So when I get couples, we talk about the gardener and the rose. One person's providing support, the other one's growing, taking turns. And that was what my wife and I work through. And I'll ask the person that's going to be the gardener, how long has the rose needed to make a change? The answer is always years. They've known they needed a change for 1, 3, 5, 7 years. And I'm like, so let me get this straight. Not only are you unhappy with what you're doing, but you've been doing it and unhappy for 5 years. Change. Yeah. Now, absolutely. A whole lot easier to say than do. Let's be real on this. But I'm trying to challenge people because I say you figure out your life first, then your finances, then your taxes. Most dinks, dual income couples, can live on one income as long as they're not doing something, they don't have a lot more housing than they need or something like that. Well, then that means one person can grow and find themselves. And they go, well, but we like having two incomes. So do I. Okay, I agree with you. But if, I'm just going to make it up my life, if my wife is unhappy, well, then let's change.
You don't have to stay stuck forever.
And they go, well, I'll think about it. Okay, cool. And by the way, we meet with people. We do initial meetings. We do ongoing, all that. I have people reach out to me a year later going, yeah, I wasn't ready at this point, but now I am. Okay, whenever you're ready, I'm here. I'll walk you through the steps. Let's figure it out. And sometimes it is starting a small business. Sometimes it's another job. Sometimes going back to school. It's whatever. But I usually recommend to people, if they can afford it, take a sabbatical. 6 months off, figure out what you want to do. Now, that's a luxury. Let's be real on that. That's not something everybody can do. But the way I do a sabbatical is the first 2 months, You take off, you watch Netflix. You do nothing. And now I tell people that and they always laugh at me. And I'm like, no, seriously, pick a streaming service, run through their catalog. And they go, well, I prefer Hulu. Well, that's fine. I don't care. It's not like I'm not talking about the streaming service. The point is, I want you to stop thinking about work for a while. And the truth is, for most people, you get to your 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever it is, all you've done is work your entire life. You know, I get people that even just came out of college, they get a few years in, and I'm like, you've been going nonstop. What do you want to do? They'll say, I want to do X. Cool. Why aren't you doing it? Well, because I was trained in Y. I'm like, so change it. So what we do is 2 months, do nothing. The next 2 months, figure out what you want to be when you grow up. Now, I use that comment a lot, and that's probably closer to my tagline. What do you want to be when you grow up, I guess? But it has nothing to do with age. It is, what do you want the next 40 years of your life to look like, or whatever it is? It's interesting because you're going to spend the second set of 2 months in your sabbatical trying to figure that out. And then the last 2 months, I want you to just try it. Like if you want to open a cupcake shop, and I say cupcake shop all the time, so whenever my wife's mad at her job, she wants to open a cupcake shop. And if you're going to go do that, I want you to go work for a couple of weeks in a bakery. When you're getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning to make cupcakes, all of a sudden the cupcake shop is a little less interesting. Or you might love it. I don't know. Go be an intern. Go try things out. Go shadow somebody. You know, go find somebody who's doing the job. Ask them how they got there and ask them to do it again and what advice they'd give you. And that's a luxury you can do. You can take the sabbatical to figure out what you want to do. Now people go, well, but I got to pay my bills. We'll go over the budget. We'll make sure you have an emergency fund. We can put a little cash cushion. Even for the soloists out there, you can do it. You know, if you want to start a small business, maybe you make it at the same time as you're doing your full-time job and then make a small jump over to it like Ashley did. I don't know. But there are ways, if you're unhappy, to make the change. Now, Bri, when you said, hey, I just tell everybody to quit their job, was that what you meant?
No, it's not like, that's just more of a direct way of saying it. It sounds more fun, but it's a very thought out process, but he'll like kick you in the butt.
Oh yeah, I love that. I love kicking people in the butt. Let's be real. I mean, people joke about it. It's absolutely true. You sit down with me, I flip open your brain, scramble it a bit, close it back up, and then say, good luck. It's like, what happens if? I will do this because people have never taken the time to think about it. The way I look at what I do is I hold up a mirror to what people say they want versus what they're actually doing. That's hard because we get very used to people telling us what to do. We don't listen to ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
So I did this to somebody the other day, and it's one of those skills that I've picked up. And they were talking about their job, coming out of college, trying to figure out what the next step was. And they said they wanted to do this job, and I'm staying vague intentionally to respect privacy. And I hold back a mirror and I said, okay, so this is what you said you want to do. They said, yes. Okay, why aren't you doing it? Well, because I've got good grades, so I should go be a lawyer or an engineer. And I'm like, that's not what you said you want to do. Well, but, I had somebody who was a medical resident last couple of years, miserable, hating his life. We really want to do art. Worked with him for quite a while. Found out later he actually did go to do art. He's happier than ever, making a whole lot less than the money he could have made it as doctor, but he's happier. I don't know. I call him recountering your life. I mean, what brings you joy? That's more important to me. Joy or what makes you happy versus what brings you the most money.
Absolutely. And, we see people's numbers, and I don't think that the people who have more money are any happier than the people who don't. And maybe sometimes they're a little bit more unhappy because they're in a job that they don't like.
Yeah, the data says, and there's a couple different studies on this recently. The original study was said about $85,000. Any penny over that, you don't make much more happiness. I've seen some that 100, 120. What happens in the U.S., depending where you're living, once you get your basic needs met, it doesn't make you happier. It buys you more toys. Toys don't necessarily make you happier. Okay, so here's a great example. I get people, I love to travel. Cool. What do you want to do to travel? Well, we'll go over what the travels. Well, they say, my job is so stressful, I need 2 weeks to travel every 6 months. Okay. So that 2 weeks is for your own sanity. Yep. What if you quit your job instead? Well, then I wouldn't need to travel as much. So what you're saying is Your job is worth you giving up your sanity and living with the stress. And the travel is just a way to compensate. Well, like, well, what? Like, that's the cycle we're stuck in. It's a hedonic treadmill, hedonic adaptation, the gerbil wheel, whatever you want to call it. We just keep going up and up and up in salaries, hoping that it's going to make us happier, or up and up in job titles. And if you want to do that, cool. I had somebody really didn't need the money, but had a great job opportunity up ahead, moving up the ladder. And I said to him, look, if you would do that for free and enjoy it, do it. But this job gives me a whole lot of better salary, the better benefit. Ignore that. Would you still do it?
That's hard to ignore.
And I'm with you. I get it. It's hard to ignore. I mean, we all want to make more money, but at what cost?
Absolutely.
And that's the hard question. If you're listening here, by the way, you know just as well as I do that you need to quit your job. Just like,
there it is.
Been come this far into this discussion. We're, whatever, 15 minutes. If you are in a couple, ask your spouse, how long have I needed to quit my job? They'll tell you. If you're a soloist, ask your friend, how long have you needed to quit your job? And they'll tell you. Yeah. Don't ask your peers, by the way. Don't ask the people you work with, because that's, that might cause trouble. But
True.
How long have you needed a change? And the answer is, I've needed it for quite a while. Well, then what are you doing to get there? And then I have people, well, but I'm working on this project. So if you listen to Heather Scott's podcast, Heather even talked about it. Well, I have to put off, I have to put off quitting my job for this project. Guess what? If you got hit by a bus tomorrow, your job would post it the next day. They'd be at the funeral asking if anyone has a referral, and the project would go on. All right. Well, I owe my employer. No, you don't owe employer anything. They pay you. You do the job. You don't owe them a thing.
That is something that's really hard to break, especially if you grew up with parents who have been in their jobs forever, or people like all your friends' parents have that. You're not your parents' people.
And you're child free, so you're not following their life script. Change.
Exactly.
I get people, well, I hate where I'm living. Well, then move. There's a website called Make My Move. Literally, they pay you to move. Well, but I can't leave my job. Get a different job.
Yep. You may notice that Jay and I are very passionate about this. Me personally, it's because if you have the ability to make a change and you're not, and you're just complaining about it, it drives me nuts. Do something about it and be happier.
And by the way, I joke, but it's true. I go back and forth between patting you on the back and kicking you in the butt. I try to give you the tough love, but if you are child-free and you are struggling financially, there's ways to change. If you're child-free and you're doing well financially and you're not happy with your job, change. Change your location, change where you are. But that opens up the other issue, which is, well, but what do I want to be when I grow up? I don't know. I have no insight on that. All I do is ask people questions and see where they want to go, and we'll figure it out. And I got some people starting businesses. I got people, Heather's a great example. She wrote her own novel. Ashley started her own freelance business, writing for all different places. Whatever. It doesn't matter. But you get to follow your dreams. They go, well, but I don't know what my dreams are. Well, that's what we need to work on. There's a reason why I do what we do is we call it life and financial planning. Figure out life first, then your finances. People go, well, but can I retire? Well, do you want to? Well, no, I want to do something else. Well, then go do that. Well, I always wanted to work in a nonprofit. Well, then go do that. Well, nonprofit doesn't pay well. That's okay. Downsize your house. Downsize your living, and you can enjoy that. And it's funny because I've done this so much. People fight me for a while. And I got some people that really fight me. We get 6 months in and they will make a change. And by the way, the change is always messy. Let's be real. You're shifting jobs. Something goes wrong, like a hot water heater blows in their house or something. Always something goes wrong in the move or whatever else. And then we get to the end and I will be sitting across from them and we meet via Zoom. And you can just see the light coming off them. The stress is gone. They are just a different person. And I check back, I'm like, how you doing? Awesome. Blah, 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 blah. And they'll just cool. And all they had to do was make that change they've wanted to do forever. But they needed that kick in the butt to do it.
Yep.
Now, are you ready for that change? I don't know. But here's the thing. What's holding you back? That's the bigger question. And what's mostly holding people back is their own head trash. That is the garbage we tell ourselves. Well, if I leave this job, I'll never find a better job, and I'll be, I'll never be. Yeah. Okay, fine. That's all the stuff you tell yourself. That's not reality. That is not what's really going to happen. What's really going to happen is you might fail. You might. But you know what? You might be happier because you tried. And I get into discussions with people, and one of my favorite to dive in is 2 parts. First question is, whose voice is in your head telling you what you have to do? Which, by the way, we all have some voices in our head. That is, like our parents, our culture, our life, our professors, well, you should do this. That's nice. They don't get a vote. So that's the first part. But as you start pulling apart and saying, well, whose voice is in your head? You start going, well, what's my voice? People just don't know. I'll ask people, well, what does Bri want to do? And they'll be like, oh, I've always been, and they'll fill in the blank. I've always done. Cool. That's looking back. Give yourself credit for that. Where do you want to go? Oh. And that's the fun part, is to dive in with people and say, well, let's figure that out. So I guess, Bri, you're right. Quit your job.
See?
Make a change. It's just a little bit more nuanced.
Very true. That's all for this week's episode of Childfree Wealth Podcast. Be sure to follow Childfree Wealth on social media, email us at podcast@childfreewealth.com, or visit our website, www.childfreewealth.com.